Welcome to the Yoga Connection with Zorananda. The Yoga Connection is a deep dive into everything yoga. Follow along with Zorananda and his guests as they discuss yoga history, spirituality, different practices, and the many misconceptions that have followed along throughout the years of yogic tradition. Hello and welcome everybody to the Yoga Connection. My name is Zorananda, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with and having an awesome conversation with Zarnoosh on Christmas Eve. We recorded an episode last week and I totally bombed on the audio, so this is round 2, and in divine timing bringing us to the eve of Christ's birth. So feels synchronistic, and it feels good now to have everything set and ready, and to dive into an amazing conversation with Zarnoosh. So what's up, Zarnoosh? Say hello, and how's it going?
Zorananda, what a pleasure to be here with you on this 2023 Christmas Eve.
That's right. Likewise. So, man, you've been working away passionately and creatively on a new project that is, in my view, in my biased opinion, fucking awesome. And yeah, we've been doing podcasts together for, I think, like 2 years now. And we've developed this really neat new friendship, just like we've shared in the past, just kind of randomly in synchronicity meeting each other on Instagram, and then leading up to this point where you've established a really amazing story, and are now in the middle of releasing this new music. You started with Serpents, and then now you're at the Revenant of Time, where today, that's what's going to be our focus in not only the concept of the music, but also the art direction, and also just like the free flow of conversations. We have some topics to discuss, but yeah, how about we let's start with the music stuff, and get into what that project looks like. So tell us about Cloak and Dagger trilogy.
Right, so this version of myself, my music has always been a reflection of my personal growth and my personal development. I've always kept the two tightly intertwined because I believe that music is an emotional language, and that your personal development journey as a consciousness on earth in this material incarnation is tantamount to communicating. And for me, Cloak and Dagger, which is the debut trilogy of my life's work coming together, all the different skill sets I've learned musically and creatively and artistically and storytelling and visually, all the senses through my life. And I wanted to start with a journey and a body of work that deals with my inner work. So I would say that Cloak and Dagger represents my journey into fusing and balancing my divine masculine and sacred feminine aspects of myself and that inner journey.
Amazing. And I think even just to get into the first track a little bit, just like the name Star Serpents kind of gets into that too, where if like I imagine in my mind, when you have say two snakes that are mating, and like the way that they coil into each other, right? And it's this like dance but then also it's like a struggle, right? Because they're almost like fighting with each other. But then it culminates into this like beautiful entanglement, and 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 so this idea of like, and I'm just kind of like riffing on this, but like the idea of star serpents, where you have these two celestial bodies that are so far away from each other. If you think like stars in the universe, but then there's this like entanglement that we don't see through like gravitational pull and like binary stars and how they interact with each other, but so far away, but in some ethereal way, like come together energetically. And so that's just like the imagery that comes to my mind. And then seeing the music video, and just the level of like creative visualization and creative direction is, to me, awe-inspiring. You know, I look at something like that is so unique, and it gets me thinking about kind of what am I to do with the music that I'm creating and that I'm doing. So you provide this framework of what is possible, I feel. And so like, you know, like the little thing I was riffing on like the stars and the serpents, I think that is coming out of the inspiration of like seeing the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I love so much that you use the term awe-inspiring, because another huge proponent of my work is that I am continuously awe-inspired. So when you said that, I felt like, you know, it takes one to know one. Like I was able to inspire awe in you, because my work is really a communication of how much awe I continuously feel at even the most mundane of aspects of existence.
Amazing.
It also made me think of this great quote by the Persian philosopher poet Rumi, which was, "I am in you and I am you. No one can understand this until he has lost his mind."
So yeah, that's great. And it's so simple, right? And yet like there's like a cryptic kind of like mystery, like mysterious sense to it, right? Because
cliches, bro. Cliches are fucking powerful. They get severely underestimated. Yeah. It's almost like as we're coming of age, society as a whole, there's this kind of subliminal message, like fortune cookies, cliches. These are useless, trite nothings. They're just filler. But the more through my life journey I go, I realize that cliches are everything. They hold huge swaths of information encoded in this overtly simplistic, childlike phrase that, yes, even a child could understand. But the power of a cliche as you go through your journey, it's fractal. It just keeps on growing in complexity the more you look at these super simplified statements.
Yeah, and even like that first line of you know, like what I see in me is what I see in you, or vice versa. Even though it's so simple, as just like individual people, it can be hard to understand that, right? And it can be hard to empathize on how we, like, a part of myself is within someone else. And so what I think of as an experience, say interacting with a friend or a stranger or a partner, that we are interacting with a part of ourselves, whether we want to see it or not, right? And so like the second line of like, in order to really see that, you have to like lose your mind, right? You have to lose this faculty that is judging and that is compartmentalizing and that is picking things apart so that you can cut away the biases and cut away the assumptions so that you can look in someone and you can look at someone and you can directly see how you show up in that person. And I want to try to kind of relate that to Star Serpents in the video, and more so I think even in their new one, Revenant of Time, because then I think it's in Revenant of Time there's like a new character that shows up, right? There's like if trying to remember this correctly, if there's like a female version of like a masked character. Is that right?
Yeah, so we introduce her in Star Serpents, but
Yeah.
in Revenant of Time, she has now consumed me in her realm.
Ah, yes. Yeah, and so
The hollow-faced girl.
yeah, that's right. And I think for whatever reason in our world, there's like a challenge or a difficulty to allow ourselves to surrender fully into another person and to see that, you know, how much of ourself is being reflected from that person. And that's what I feel like you're capturing in this music and in these videos, is like showcasing that, how do I want to say it? Showcasing that there's like power to it. And so, yeah, I'd love for you to now like jump into the Revenant of Time and to share like more in depth like what's going on. Yeah, just like the process of creating it, and yeah, just like what's going on with the symbolism and what's being shown.
Well, the aspects I am comfortable to speak about, because I really do like the idea of people digging their own meaning and relating it back to their own existences. But
Yeah.
the aspects that I am comfortable speaking of would be that at the time of writing that song, I would say I was severely in denial of the integration of the more feminine aspects within me. And I was rejecting them and trying to battle these attributes that I didn't see necessary to keep within my expression of life. And there was a lot of resistance, and that I was trying to communicate the feeling of overcoming that resistance. And like what you said, an important theme of this song is the power in vulnerability, the power in frailty. And it wasn't until I was able to, on this particular aspect of the journey of integrating my masculine and divine self, as above, so below. So it was a reflection of my environment at the time in more overt, indirect ways. And my environment was directly reflecting what I was going through on the inside on my personal growth journey. And at that time, I was just upset with all the things I once loved about myself. And I was really mad with all of these things that I really loved about myself, and just trying to express that feeling, which is such a fucking hard feeling to express, right? The feeling of knowing you should make space for these things you just can't get along with about yourself.
And I think that's like an archetype to humanity, right? if there's something that we can share as fellow humans, is sometimes just like the inability to grasp and I'm gonna find a better word for like deal with like these internal struggles, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing about art and music, is when we don't have the words for these like struggles and these emotions, art and music comes into play as like a beautiful medium to display those things. And so when you have the urge to create and to put something out there without fully knowing the impact, you can be communicating something through that medium and touch the hearts and the minds of people with what you're sharing, right? And I think that's the cool thing about what you're doing in not only using like really professional standards for video creation, but then also the AI generation of the art, and that taking someone on a visual journey to represent what you're feeling is just so impactful. And like we were talking about just before recording, how you released Star Serpents, and there's this like pretty big campaign of promoting it. And, on your Instagram, you have videos that have like 200,000 to 400,000 views. And, and then like almost 10,000 streams on Spotify. And then when you released Revenant of Time, you didn't really need to do that level of promotion. And then within days, it was like, boom, you hit like just about 6,000 streams. And I think that's like a testament to the impact of how that like those feelings and those unspeakable kind of things that like it's hard to grasp, but then you channel it through your music, people just immediately magnetize towards it. And it's so awesome to see, because that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out too, and like in my music and what I'm releasing. And so it's just like at first hand to see how it works is really inspiring to me. And yeah, that was a bit of a rant, but I hope that makes sense.
Oh, those are really kind words. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful that even a fraction of the feelings I put into my work are being received, because that is my soul on a platter, man. Like
Yeah.
when I'm writing my music, a lot of the times I'm not using a pen. I'm just, I guess you could say, freestyling it. So I'm looking for those perfect moments where the melody, the words, the lyricism, like, and I'm usually only able to find those moments in the creative process when I'm in a trance state and I'm not in my ego. I'm not trying to think about what rhymes or think about what makes sense logically. I'm trying desperately to let go of my logic and to immerse myself in my heart center and my heart chakra, and to really just feel what I have repressed. Like they always, mages and wizards and occultists and religious figures from every denomination and walk of life since the dawn of existence itself have always spoke about the importance of journaling. And for me, this music is my journaling. And I'm capturing the essence of my best my journal, and I'm sharing them with you guys. So thank you, man. To express it like that means so much to me. I can't even put into words. I got to freestyle a song about this now.
Yeah. That's great though, because just what you said, like, provides a little window into your creative process, right? And I think it's important for people to know that it is possible to take a step back from what can be a conventional way of doing things, in that what it means to be in harmony with the creative process is going to look different for each person, and it kind of reminds me of like Jay-Z, like Rick Rubin always talks about how Jay-Z would just like show up. He has nothing written, and yet he has just like everything memorized. And a lot of the times he's coming up with things on the spot that, there's this like other concept of being in contact with the muse that, we don't have control over that. And yet there's this really potent magical moment that when you're creating the music, you're listening to it, you're in the vibe of it, that suddenly there's going to be this inspiration that comes about you. And the words will fit the music without you being in control of that. And I've had moments like that, even creating this like last rock album with my producer, and he hated it. Like, I would show up and he would be like, "Oh, do you have lyrics written, or do you like?" And I'm like, "No." And he'd just look at me and shake his head. He's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I'm like, "We're just going to listen to the music. We're going to vibe with it, and it's going to come out." And it worked every time. And yeah, it was a bit more of a lengthy process because, like, typically when you're like booking studio time and you're working with a producer, like, they're expecting that you basically have everything already set out, and you just show up, you record, and you dip out. And so with my producer, John, I was also helping him in being more spontaneous in the moment. So I would show up, and we'd be working on putting the music together, and all of a sudden it's just like the flow and the muse would come to me, and it just all, and then these lyrics would come out, and we'd record it, and we'd look at each other and be like, "Holy shit." Like, I don't know how that worked, but it just like worked so beautifully. And that's what I love about music. And that's what I love about being a creator is, it's, you're just pulling these gems almost out of like nothing. Right. And then you have this amazing product at the end of it.
Oh man, it's such a beautiful way to do things. I love to hear that process you went through on those last batch of amazing songs. By the way, Zorananda's music is super inspiring as well. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was utterly taken aback because I think I first found your work in the form of a book. You were advertising at the time, and I think it was a post or something. I'm not sure how it found me, but then I found out you had this amazing music too. So I just love that once you come in contact with that feeling and that message that you can only find through wandering. And Jeff Bezos was just talking about this on his podcast with Lex, that you had mentioned to me in last week's recording. And I went back and kind of watched it all inspired because you were really inspired by it. And I rewatched it. And he was talking about how a big part of his creative process involves wandering, right? Like you have to be willing to kind of aimlessly look to find the gold, because you can trick yourself, right? If you know what you're looking for. And that's another way of working too. So I do appreciate what you said. There is a magic in bottling up the spontaneity, but there definitely is another magic that comes from sitting down and meticulously planning each move and strategizing. And I think there's a magic from both worlds. And I've worked
Mm.
and I've collaborated with other artists in many forms of media throughout my life who have leaned more towards one of those forms of creation than the other, like logic and planning versus emotion and spontaneity. And I've really just kind of cherry picked from all these amazing people I've worked with and built my own formula that works with me. And just like with my spirituality, everything else I try to do, one of my major philosophies in life is to really be your own scientist, be your own leader, be your own philosopher, and all these preordained kind of systems are there for you to find what works for you and to be okay with finding something that works for you, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, the lesson that came out of that whole experience for me is like that balance between the two, right? Where like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if we want to be efficient and we want to save time and cost, then yeah, it will be beneficial for me to show up with a fully built song. And then when we're recording, there's still room for spontaneity, right? So we're gonna lay out the scratch track. We're gonna, put together the demo. Then we're gonna listen to it. Then when it comes to recording, say the vocals, then in the moment of it, because I'm already so familiar with it, I have the room and the flexibility to improvise, and I have the feeling of like, you know what, I'm gonna do this instead of this. And then like the sparks of magic are still there. And and like when I look back in the last 2 years where we, instead of doing that, I would like show up and we'd kind of build the song from the ground up. And the yeah, so the lesson for me was and for John, that it's okay to also in the moment like create things. Like say for the guitar solos, like I would show up and you'd be like, "Hey, do you know what you're doing?" I'm like, "No, we're gonna make it up right now." And then suddenly we just flesh out this amazing solo, and then we just look at each other and be like, "Holy shit!" Like this is awesome, right? Um, and yeah, so I could really relate to you on that level of like just being so absorbed into the music that it's like the music itself pulls the lyrics out of you, and it pulls the ideas. And because a lot of the time when I'm sitting down with my guitar and I'm making something up, I'm not thinking about what key I'm playing in. I'm not thinking about what chords I'm going to play. I just close my eyes and sit with my guitar, and I just tell myself, and I just say like, universe, work through my hands. And there'll be times where I don't even play guitar for like 2 weeks or even 3 weeks. I don't even touch it. And I'll just wake up one morning and it's like magnetic attraction. I just go right to my guitar, and then boom, my hands start playing something. And I immediately record it, and then I listen back to it and I'm like, "Oh," and then the gem of what the melody is that's coming out just grows from there. And yeah, so like part of my intention with like where I'm going with music is to find collaborators and to find people that kind of work in a similar manner, because that was one of the intentions that I set over the last like couple months going into the new year. I was like, you know what, I want to collaborate more, and I want it to be in such like an organic way where I'm not particularly like messaging people and being like, "Hey, do you want to collaborate?" It just happens so organically, and the conversation comes up and it's a yes on both parts, like yeah, like we kind of had that moment not too long ago when you were releasing this music, and I was just like, "Hey man, it'd be so great to do something together." And like when and where, it's like that doesn't matter, but I know like it would be so awesome to make some music together. Because yeah, I think my growth as a musician, how do I want to say it? It's like the way that I want to grow is by developing like friendships and developing connections, and so that, like, you know, the music that's created is reflective in that process.
Soul on a platter, man. I love to hear it. I think that's such a noble way to go about things, right? And you touched on something that Lao Tzu talks a lot about in his reflections on the Tao, which is this principle of like effortless living, right? Like,
Yeah.
if like the path, it's so interesting because it's so contrasting to like Western philosophy, right? Where the Western philosophy, it's like the path of least resistance is like a bad thing, right? Don't take the path of least resistance. It's all about grinding and working extremely hard for your results, and the hardest worker can outwork any creative genius and can have yield higher results. And that's kind of like the grounding virtues that have been principled into us being raised in the Western world. But the Eastern world, you know, especially this Lao Tzu's kind of version of the Tao, really emphasizes the path of least resistance as the highest path. So how do you compromise those opposites? Well, again, it's a little of column A and a little of column B. If you're taking the easy way out all the time, like, I don't think that's what he meant, right? Either. I think when he's talking about the effortless way, he's not saying you're taking the easiest way, because sometimes not putting in effort can be a hard thing to do. So really looking for the cracks in this whole thing that are already there, that you can just kind of like break open the glass effortlessly.
Yeah, so it's not about like lethargy, right? Where
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking for the easy way out because of laziness or because of like an avoidance, right? It's
Yes.
the effortless path has been created, that you put in the work so that as you move forward, you're not trudging through this like thick mud of life, that you did the work to set up the road for the travel that's going to be effortless, right? So you can enjoy the travel, so you can enjoy the journey, rather than, you know, inadvertently setting up all these roadblocks. And yeah, so, and that's interesting because like, that's where I think the hard work and, or even just like your ability to put in work, isn't like in of itself a proof of value, right? And I think that's what makes it easier for collaborations to take place. It's easier for the yeses to happen, right? And navigating this like whole world, you know, I've had many people say no to me for things, right? If it's being a guest on a podcast, if it's getting someone to be on my podcast, if it's collaborating on music, if, you know, whatever, you name it. But then seeing how, okay, if I want to shift that into yeses and enthusiasm, then what I build up for myself in like creating a catalog of music, creating a presence in social media, and then, you know, what community am I a part of, or what am I tapping into that will allow me to shift so that there are more yeses, right? And where I started was like, what's close to home? So me and my friend Matt, he's a DJ. He does particularly tech house. And we just did a track together called Backflip. And so like right now it's on SoundCloud. But man, it was like one of those moments where we were at a festival together and we were just hanging out and talking, and we are just talking about the music that we were creating, and we were just like, yeah, let's make a track together. And it was just like so easy, and it was just so fun. And it was awesome because on Friday, him and a few others put together this solstice event, and he DJ'd in it and played the track. And it was just so awesome to see everyone just like fucking dancing and just loving it, right? So like it's those moments where you know that the shift to working with people that are just like a immediate yes, that there's just this energy that goes into it that would be different if someone's like, oh, okay, well, I don't know about it, but you know, I'll give it a try, you know, that, you know, chances are it's not going to work out. And I'd rather hear a no. You know, if someone's going to be iffy about it, I'd rather just be like, you know what, it's all good. We'll, you know, I'll find someone else. But, yeah. And so that was the feeling that I got with you, where I was just like, yeah, man, it'd be great to, do some kind of collaboration where I have my guitar and, you know, and to get that yes, that's the signifier to me that it's like, oh fuck yeah, this is gonna be great. And
well, that sounds like Friday night, for example. That's
yeah.
If that's not like a break in the clouds and the sun shining down on you moment, I don't know what is, right? So that sounds like not only was the process itself easy, but the outcome was incredibly validating.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and just like speaking on that, like that example from Lao Tzu of like the path of least resistance, right? Of and sometimes challenges are going to come up, right? Like like recording this episode, right? And just like you know, doing a whole episode last week, and then the challenge of all the audio stuff, and then like recording it again today, that sometimes mistakes are made and sometimes things happen. And luckily, and, you know, fortunately for me, you're an understanding person, right? And because we've established like a good connection and friendship over the years, that the path of least resistance shows up, right? That even amidst like, you know, little technical difficulties and like time delays, that it doesn't divert towards like complicating things and anger and resentment. It's like, oh yeah, it's all good. Let's stay on the path of least resistance and ease, and just like go forward, pick another date, and it's all good. But
yeah, least resistance, not no resistance, right?
yeah.
Though I do, as I was thinking that, I was also thinking that Lao Tzu would probably say, no, you want no resistance. So who knows?
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. I also, yeah, I want to, get into these other topics as well. Cause I'm just thinking about the last week and what we were talking about. And, yeah, so I think this would be a good way to go into, the second point that you had, that you sent me, of the laws of the universe, and the how do I want to say, the comparison between laws of the universe and obeying like tenets of monotheistic religions. And I want to tie this in sort of like what we were just talking about with like the comparison between like resistance and no resistance, right? Where like, if you were to really be in touch with these like fundamental principles that we just see in nature and that we see in the universe and as humans, that where does resistance and where does no resistance show up? And likewise with obeying rather than like being in tune with the laws of nature, obeying these tenets that are man-made, right? And where does like resistance and no resistance show up in that?
Yeah. I think I can bring those two worlds together by talking about parents and their children and how, it's a generally unanimous across cultures, socioeconomic, across any form of label or division we could put between ourselves as a species, even just as like sentient creatures, objects, that if a parent is resisting a child succeeding in the path that the parent set out for them, that we see that as a bad thing, right? Like we condemn parents who are competitive with their own children. We condemn parents who don't want their children to be healthier than they were, to have more opportunities than they have. Like it's a law of nature that you want your children or the next generation to evolve. And something I just found when philosophizing and looking at the major monotheistic religions in particular, they don't really leave room for the adherents to come back to God and say, hey man, I figured out some stuff down there. According to the monotheistic religions, it's kind of based on obeying the omnipotent leader, because the leader is all good and is everywhere. And why would they need anything from us measly humans? And just something about that concept, I feel, is inverted to the truth, which is, I believe, again, right now I'm in an agnostic phase and I'm always changing. I do not stagnate, and I allow myself to be flexible with my spiritual and scientific and philosophical observations. And right now I'm in an undecided phase. We could even get more into that. Really what I believe in right now, as a little side note before I connect it back to the other thing, is that I think that for the most part, things are determined, but that within that determined path, we have a little bit of room for free will. So I think it's like mostly we can't really change things, but we have control over a little bit of it, of the journey along the way. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. But so just to say what my perspective is, because I'm not condemning the adherents of monotheistic religion. I grew up in a family that was devoutly Zoroastrian and was extremely religious. So I do understand what that world is and what that experience is. And I have a lot of respect for that world and that experience. But I do feel that like God would want us to be like, listen, man, you were right about this, but I don't think this thing is playing out exactly as you predicted. And I think that if that God was omnipotent, he'd be like, thanks. Just like when I have children, I'm looking forward to my children figuring out things I couldn't figure out. I'm looking forward to them keeping me tethered to what it is. And I see the same thing in all walks of life. Even trees, if a tree dies in the woods, its roots continue to provide nutrients for the local ecosystem. Like this applies on every single quantifiable level of perception and experience. So yeah, just a little thought I've been having about monotheistic religions, and just like kind of sad that, their depiction of infinity leaves no room for evolution.
Yeah, it's I really like thinking it in that way of like that there's a two-way street to it, and that there's some feedback where rather than a complex where there's a hierarchy of control,
Mm-hmm.
and that in our relationship to a higher power or a relationship to God or our higher self, that and this is something that we were talking about last time in the last recording, that like um, that there's no room for God to learn, right? In like these monotheistic religions, that like the level of perfection, the level of omnipotence and omnipresence is that there's only room for a top down influence than there is for a bottom up influence. And
Precisely.
that's where if we were to kind of follow the line of evolution, we're to follow the line of, you know, how humanity is going to grow into a greater being, that we're setting this omnipotent state of consciousness up as the foundation for it. And so there must be this reverence for that timeline. And I just realized I just basically used the title of your song.
Revenant of Time.
Yeah. Revenant of Time. So yeah, that there is this feedback, you know, and that that we can view like a totality of existence as also something that grows and something that learns, and that's something that looks at us as a counterpart to it and observes what we're doing and is learning from the collective, right? And
Collaborative. It's absolutely this collaborative relationship, not like a two-way street relationship with infinity itself. Absolutely, man.
yeah, and I think that is what can really truly touch on like, let's say, God's, or, you know, like the universe benevolence, that it innately has a sense of compassion and empathy, and and that's where you see it manifesting more in Eastern religion, right? That there's a sense of unconditional love, and there's a sense of like divinity, and rather than a like stronger masculine sense of it, of just driving its influence into humanity, that there's a divine mother aspect of welcoming us into
Mm.
itself, right? And um and I think that's important really to consider, you know, that there's a way to look at how we, how do I want to say it, like how we are an influential puzzle piece to the greater picture of existence, right? And that you know, when we consider, you know, the laws of the universe, that we have a say in how these laws are formulated. And it's so funny, like trying to talk about these things sometimes, because it becomes so abstract. And but it's like, to me, it's like a mental exercise, you know, like we're kind of flexing the muscles of our mind to try to grasp these concepts that are kind of held and gatekept by like the upper echelons of religions, right? When you look at, like, you know, the top three of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, that you have the Pope and the rabbis and the imams who are like disseminating down the ladder of, you know, like, this is God's word, and it's so penetrative, right? It's like, it's so masculine, and like, this is what it is, and this is absolute, and this is the word of God. Where, you know, you look at like a place like India, where there's so much more of an emphasis on Divine Mother, of like, it's not about, you know, disseminating, it's how do we absolve into, like, how do we do the work to open up the channels so that we can be welcomed into the divine love and the space of our creator, right? And I think that can be a good place to segue into this to final point. And yeah, I just got to say, like, these topics are fucking awesome. You know, when I saw these, when you sent me the list, I was just like, amazing. They tie into each other so well. Of now going into this like soulmate concept, right? Of now, how do we look at then the dichotomy between like men and women, and what drives us to and this goes back to that first quote from Rumi that you brought up, right? Like, seeing myself in you. And I really love this idea because you know, I grew up diving deep into like the new age spiritual world, and, you know, the topic of twin flames and soulmates, and it was just like, I just impressed it so deeply in my mind of finding my soulmate. But this idea of like, if you really want to come from a place of healing and you really want to embody being healed, there is no soulmate. And that's kind of trippy to think about.
Yeah, you know, there's this crazy thing I grew up over here keeping my eyes on, which was, I remember feeling supremely uncomfortable my first day of kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, or I don't even remember where it started, but my first day going into the school system. And every one of my classmates had a favorite color and they had a favorite number. And up until that point, I loved all colors. I loved all numbers. I'd never even conceptualized what it meant to have a favorite. And I remember feeling this pressure that because I didn't have a zero latency response to their inquiries about what is your favorite color, what is your favorite number, I was outcast and deemed as the crazy one. I was deemed as the crazy one because I couldn't say, my name is Zarnoosh, I like 7 and blue, right?
Yeah.
And it seemed so inverted. Even at that, I must have been 4 or 5 years old. I still have the distinct feeling of like, what the fuck is going on with this? I could not put my finger on it. And that, I've been looking at that my whole life. So many people, the most unhealed of people I've come across, identify with themselves as a list of things they do not like. And then the people a little bit more healed than that, I've noticed this is my opinion, they identify themselves with things they do not like and a couple of things they do like. And then people more healed than that, they identify themselves with things they do like. So maybe they're less negative and they're not focusing on fault finding and blame shifting and things they don't like, but they're still only focusing on the aspects of reality that they do like as a way to identify and stand strong in their persona, right? But the most healed of people I've come across, they don't give a shit, and Ram Dass talks about this beautifully. I was so grateful that I came across this story and anecdote of his because it completely solidified this, right? Because as I was saying this opinion and experimenting with this idea, I would come across a lot of resistance because people would always then respond to me, so what? You don't have preferences? Like they say, Zarnoosh, you tend to wear black a lot. You tend like calling me out. And Ram Dass kind of cleared it up and helped me finesse this concept because the way he put it was that, and he has a great story and anecdote, but I'm going to leave that out. You leave some room for everyone to discover and explore on their own. But the way that he put it was that it's not about not having preferences. It's about not being attached to those preferences. And, he referred to it as like an so moment, like so, right? And he would say that, it's not like and this is my example, but he would say something along the lines, it's not that if you show up and you want a banana smoothie, but they only have pomegranate smoothies, you're not going to say, I don't want a smoothie. You're going to be like, I want a banana, but you know what? So it looks like I'm having pomegranate today. And it's about being flexible with your preferences and not so judgmental and not, and then, so applying that to soulmates, I feel like if everybody was healed, then it doesn't matter what genders, like gay, straight, wherever you are, unbinary, non-binary, where whatever you're called, whatever your predetermined invisible lines of separation from one human to the other was, it wouldn't really matter because you'd be like, I'm so healed, I don't really care. Everything's amazing. If everyone was healed, everyone would be in a constant state of awe and inspiration and would be like just vibing, things going wrong. They're like, oh, well, guys, how are we going to dodge the asteroid? Like there would be no conflict. There would be no disagreeing. Like disagreeing would be a thing for the past, like off the past. We would all just, yeah, well, we have the resources. This country has X amount of water. This country has X amount of water. Well, these guys have extra water. Just give that water to the country that doesn't have it. It would just be, everyone would be in unanimous, yeah, of course we need the spaceships now. We got to get off the Earth. There would be no arguing. It would just be like, this is how we move forward with the highest amount of joy and fun and awe and compassion. And there would be no argument. And if, so I believe that if everyone was healed, there would be no soulmates, and that soulmates are actually people whose exact traumas are in sync, as opposed to their healed aspects. I think effortless unification of two souls in the modern world, aka soulmates or twin flames, doesn't come from a place of being healed, it comes from a place of their bullshit lining up.
Yeah, it's interesting because it almost seems counterintuitive only because of I would say the indoctrination through the New Age community and where this concept has come up from, and all of the kind of literature and all the impression of like what truly a soulmate is, and so to hear like a new twist on it and a new conceptualization of it is refreshing, because it does start to make sense in understanding that when we have a list of preferences, that we're superimposing that onto the person, right? And just like you were saying with just like the examples of when it comes to more like worldly matters, that coming from a place of being healed, you're not superimposing anything to ensure that um the other on the other side is going to match up, right? And so how we're informed on where there's going to be harmony is in the moment of interaction, in the moment of vibe, in the moment of spending time together, where how you come to any conclusion is just from your state of being, that there's a match that's being made. And so I remember in the last relationship that I was in, she had this like list of who she thought that like her soulmate would be. And so when I entered into her life and we met, she showed me this list. And like, yeah, I checked off like every point on this list.
Bro, I am sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah. And like at that time, that made sense to me because that's the narrative that I had. Like that was the story that I had in my mind as well too, that it was like, oh, if I'm going to be the right person for someone, I'm going to, check off this list of theirs. And so when I saw that in the moment, I was like happy. I was like, oh my God, yeah, that makes sense. But then
you got an A+.
Yeah. And so, but because of being human, because we make mistakes, it's like slowly those checks were removed, right? Slowly I was no longer living up to the standards of that list. And so slowly I'm like being removed as the soulmate because, I, um, say something and it's taken a different way, or, like whatever it is that, I'm no longer, abiding to that list. And so that's so, and I've never heard this before, so you brought this up and this is like a revelation to me of like, holy shit, that totally makes sense. That like if you were to think about just the word soul mate, right? And we think of our soul, there's no list or categorization or really conceptualization of how we get in touch with our soul. Like it's just so naturally innate that it's an intuitive feeling thing. And so,
Also, a list is rigid, right? Like I think you're tapping onto it there, and I think it's like a rigid expectation. It's also like for your ex. I mean, she unfortunately, unknowingly, put a limitation on her own experience of love and compassion in the world. Because what if she changes and her list changes?
yeah,
Right?
exactly. And so, and that speaks on like what you were saying, where your own adaptability to change, right? And that like your view of um like agnosticism is
Currently,
right. It's like there's the flexibility of how that changes, because in every moment there's a willingness to learn, there's a willingness to adapt, there's a willingness um to desire evolving, right? And so
yes, for sure.
like the beautiful thing is, over the last like month, I've met someone new and I've entered into this like beautiful connection. And so when like last week when you brought this up, it was such an amazing revelation that I was already doing that with this person, that whatever list that I was creating over the last 2 years of being like, okay, I don't want this, I don't want that, this is what I want. Like, I'm looking for like this type of person and this, and this. And then I meet this beautiful person and it just like blew my list out of the water. It was like not needed. and then it brought me into like a place of presence where um the experience of like what it can mean to have a soulmate is so much more about surrender than it is like matching up these points, right?
It is, man. I mean, like Indians have this figured out. One thing I do want to say though, because we're doing a lot of East meets West comparison, I do want to
Yeah.
say that just for everyone listening, that I believe that the things the East has got right, you know, for everything they've got right, they've got a lot of things wrong, And I just think it's a matter of boundaries. I think the East does really well with compassion, but does terrible with boundaries. I think the West doesn't do great with compassion, but does really well with boundaries.
Oh, that's a
So
great way. That's beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, so just to throw that out there, that I'm never pointing a finger. I think every single one of us has like a little mess we have to tidy up,
Yeah.
But to take us back on topic though, it's like arranged marriages, right? And I'm not saying again ups and downs on either side, but it's important to like see the gradient of life and to see the full spectrum, I think, and to make as best educated decisions as we can. And surrender is, you know, you've been bringing your personal life into this. I'll share a little bit of my personal life to connect it here, which is I believe that relationships with friends and with lovers, even parents, like there's like a fixed kind of pattern, and the vague oversimplification of that fixed pattern goes something like two people meet and they connect, but then after that initial like rush of amazing connection, those things that drew you to the person become the things that trigger you about the person, right? And I think it's at that phase in the relationship where most people are like, fuck this, I'm out, we're not going to be friends, I'm not going to work with you anymore, I'm going no contact with my family, or let's just break up, whatever the form of the relationship is. And I think the real magic comes from gritting through that period, using it to self-reflect. Like, first of all, why was I drawn to these attributes in the first place? Like, and having done this in my own relationship, I've been blessed enough to be with my wife for over 10 years now, right? So yeah. I've gone through this. This is a lived experience for me. And, and so I had to say, okay, these things that I absolutely love about this woman are now causing me so much pain. Why did I love them about this woman? Then going back into my childhood. Oh, because these things weren't there for me when I was growing up. But now that I'm comfortable, all of a sudden the habitual pattern in my mind wants to go back to the comfort zone of like the expected bad. And the expected bad is like, when I was growing up, these things weren't there and I want that. So now I'm arguing with you because I want you to be what I had because I was comfortable, right? And then so I'm going through this crazy process and I'm like, dude, Zarnoosh, like you were drawn to this woman because of these things, because you never had them. And now that you've experienced them, you're saying that you want to go back to those things that you never had because that's more comfortable for you. And then just going in, and then that entered my season, of like going to the mountain and like not eating for 7 days and like, and just really like testing myself and putting myself through, and then coming back out of this like, I can't believe I forgot how much I love these things about you. What is wrong with me? And then you're having this amazing elated moment. And now it's like the fucking best, bro. I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful. And we would not have gotten here had we done what people traditionally do, where it's just like, these things that I love about you are now triggering me, and I'm going to go find somebody else who doesn't trigger me in the same way. Right. And so in healing myself, I realized that, I'm the one who's flipped the script here, right? Because I want the familiar poison as opposed to the like unfamiliar ointment, or healing
Yeah.
potion. And so going through that journey, and then really talking, like, and then looking at older couples or other people who've had amazing relationships, have good relationships with their family, like, really it's all predicated upon this thing of like going within, understanding what triggered you and overcoming it, and then being able to hold space for yourself and the person in this relationship to for everyone to just kind of go through their shit and stop being so judgy.
Yeah. Um, that's beautiful, man. And that reminds me of so like my parents, they've been together for just about 50 years.
Wow.
So in they're at year 48, and I watched them go through everything, right? Of just like all the turmoil, even like cuz they had 4 kids, so I have like 2 twin sisters and a brother.
Oh, I didn't
And
know that. Cool.
and so like to see them go through like in just like the amazing part of like us being kids to then us being teenagers, and then like the inevitable kind of like darkness of like family drama, and like what kind of like pulls us all away, and then what has pulled us all back together, and then now how we're just all such a strong unit, like
Oh, that's nice, man.
yeah,
Congrats.
like and so the thing that I've witnessed is how they were able to really stay together. We're like on multiple fronts of like them moving from Serbia and coming to Canada together and really having nothing, right? And like starting from the bottom, and
Pressure. That's such pressure, man.
yeah, and then kind of my mom putting herself in a situation where um she mainly speaks Serbian, like she fully understands English, but it's still like, she has a tough time speaking like clearly
There's
and
a language
fluently.
barrier.
Yeah, and so for her, what I've noticed in her like justification was like it didn't make sense for her to just, whenever there's turmoil or whenever like my mom and dad would fight, for her to just like up and leave because of those barriers, right? Like there's just some things about Canada and like its system that she just didn't know. And so through the struggles, they've gotten to a place now where they just make fun of each other happily, like, so whenever there's like little tension, they just like they can just bicker and then make fun of each other and then both laugh at it, and then they just and I just watch them just be so like childlike, and because they've like so deeply accepted that um they're together forever, right? And so watching how they've been able to really learn deeply how to accept and love each other, that there's so much more laughter at the end of it, and it's like there's so much more just like joy, and that's inspiring to me, so like when I look at like even in my past relationship that didn't work out, it's like I did my best to embody um that like level of acceptance, but um yeah, it's the whole game in this life of like partnership and friendships is it's so interesting, and um it just makes being a human um just so incredibly fascinating, and yeah, it's inspiring for um to say the least, and yeah, man.
I'm just all about new concepts.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to think about things that are new and like that have nothing to kind of It's tough to get people to open their minds to new ideas, and I think the idea that soulmates might be a fallacy that we've leaned a little hard into,
Yeah.
because we're lazy to do the inner work.
Yeah, and that's what I was just thinking. Like, what I find fascinating is when you're saying like when you found yourself kind of slipping into that like kind of old story where
Mm-hmm.
this like kind of past childhood programming is coming up,
Mm-hmm.
that like for the solution for yourself is to um like do water fasting and to like kind of isolate, but it's not that like you're running away from something. You're like, oh, I know that I have this particular tool to figure out how to clear this out and then to come back refreshed and to really fully face what the perceived problem was, and how it like leads to a solution, right? And I think that's like missing in a lot of people's lives is um, that something as you know as a concept like can be as simple as fasting, but how powerful it is, and like in the last podcast that we did last year, um, yeah, you went into that quite a bit because you were going through like I think you just came out of a water fast, and and I think there's something to say about how like what we consume on a daily basis and how it builds up in our system can correlate to how we're treating ourselves and how we're treating others, and then how this like there's this kind of subtle subconscious influence from just things that have built up in our system, and how do like fasting can really help clean things out, and so that we can come back and reemerge into our life and apply like this new freshness to our relationships, our projects, our work. And yeah, and I see psychedelics like in the same kind of way. Like last night, my like new partner and I, we did a mushroom journey together, and we we planned it like a couple weeks ago, or like just over a week ago, and like leading up to it yesterday, um there's this like nervousness. We were both like so nervous about it, but as soon as we were in the middle of it, it was just so beautiful. And um just from the downloads that we were getting, and like the space that we were holding for each other, and now today, like I just feel so enlivened and refreshed. And so like how these like really powerful moments and these tools of like water fasting or even like psychedelic journey can really be helpful in clearing things out.
Yeah, it's a declutter. It's a reduction of variables. I mean, any mathematician will tell you in order to solve the problem, you got to reduce it, reduce the fraction, reduce the variables. And what better variables to reduce than, right, psychedelics, your ego, or fasting food, right? Like if you start with the principles, the Stoics used to do this. There was one of the famous Stoics, don't remember. He was rich, he had money, he was living it up in Rome. But ever so often, he would go and sleep on a stone floor and eat like grapes for a week or something. I don't remember who exactly. And he just did this to remind himself, like reducing the variables. Like the noise can come from too much of a good thing just as much as it can come from too much of a bad thing. So
Yeah.
anything you can kind of do to reduce the noise of life itself, right? And then only drinking water for a week or going on a psychedelic adventure, these are things that are reducing the noise of society, man-made life and expectations, and taking it right back to what it is to just be a consciousness in an environment. a consciousness in an environment. And the closer I'm able to put myself in these states of being pure consciousness in an environment, maybe consciousness as an extension of the environment, maybe just pure states of pure consciousness itself, the closer I can get to these states, the clearer I can kind of have my mind to be to look at all these things. And then it's fucking 10 out of 10 times I come out of one of these pure conscious states, which, like we were saying, there are many tools: extreme exercise, fasting, psychedelics, fucking abstinence, you name it. There's these amazing classic ways of reducing clutter to become pure consciousness. You come back and you realize that 90% of the shit that was giving you a hard time was some frivolous bullshit of you clinging to some pre-programmed nonsense. Like every single time you're like, why did I even bother? I really think that like life is an exercise in that, you know, in total. Like, who knows, probably we get back to the void of infinite on the other side, and it's like, dude, I was worrying about all that stuff. Oh well, back to love and creating galaxies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I and the kind of statement that I reduce it back to is like the beauty of being human, and like, you know, like we're like innately our hearts and our being is striving back towards oneness. It's striving, even if we can't conceptualize it, even if we're aware of it or not. There's, you know, back to this idea of the laws of nature, that there's this like route of evolution that's taking place that's drawing us back into that. And in the meantime, recognizing our humanness and recognizing exactly where we are, and to enable ourselves and encourage ourselves to really fully enjoy what we're doing. And that, you know, I think kind of get to a final point here to wrap it up, that in what we strive to create, in what we strive to build and experience, coming from a place of healed togetherness is going to enable that path of least resistance, that ease, to really showcase how the people in our lives can really be who they are without superimposing anything on them, without having unreal expectations, or really how to show up for ourselves in the, you know, the embodiment of that connection of togetherness. And it's really inspiring to me, like day in and day out, to really show up in my humanness, and really show up in my, like, as best as I can healed self to everyone that's close to me. If it's my parents, if it's, you know, my siblings, if it's my partner, if it's my friends,
Yourself.
myself. Yeah. That there's this, you know, there's this little window that opens up into, you know, that like oneness, and into that universal law, and into, you know, God. That's like, wow, what you're doing is amazing. And yeah, it's really enriching at the end.
And everyone's fucking amazing, bro. What you just said, like I can think about, I just started going through the people in my life as you said that. When you said what you're doing is amazing, and I'm looking at every single person in my life, and everyone's amazing. Everyone is contributing so much more good than they know they're contributing. And sometimes that's where a lot of my frustration comes from. Like, why are you sad? You're doing so much for us. Don't be hard on yourself. You're doing so much for us.
Oh, that reminds me. So last night, my lady and I were having this conversation where she was like, like I want to surrender. Like I want to surrender into these things. And I looked at her and I'm like, I think and I see that you're already doing it. I'm like, and the idea that came up was like, we look at our life and we see we're seeing missing pieces in the puzzle, right? And we're seeing like where the lack is. But then someone outside of ourselves is looking at us and they see the puzzle piece that we think is missing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where we complete each other. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really the sense of the soulmate. It's not these list of preferences. It's where the person shows up and says, it's already there.
You're whole.
Yeah. And then like, that's like, oh man, I'm like getting shivers from that, right? Of like, really, that's how we come together and we celebrate how we're whole and how we're healed.
I got shivers too.
Oh man. I think that'd be a great place to end it here. And wow. Amazing conversation again, man. And yeah, thank you so much for hopping on and being patient with me and trusting. And so looking forward to more of your project and more of the music that you share and your content. And yeah, please let the listeners know where to find you. And yeah.
Cool. You can find me on socials at on YouTube, Zarnoosh-Fire, on Instagram and Facebook, Zarnoosh.fire. And I'm on Spotify. I release music under my name, Zarnoosh. Right now, I'm promoting Revenant of Time, which is the second single in my debut trilogy in this body of work. It's the second single in the trilogy called Cloak and Dagger. And that's on YouTube right now. So yeah, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere that you can stream stuff. Please support me as much as you can. This is the beginning of my journey, and I'm really grateful to you guys and to Zorananda for helping me get this ship sailing.
Amazing. All the links will be in the bio and on Spotify and everywhere else that you can find this podcast. For as a treat for you guys, I'm going to have the song at the end of this podcast, but please go and stream it as well. So listen to it at the end of this episode. Go to YouTube, go to Spotify, go where else, anywhere else that you can find it, and support Zarnoosh in what he's doing, because I'm biased. It's awesome. I love it, and I know you will too. Thanks again, Zarnoosh, and thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I see the devil in your eyes. I saw you don a false disguise. You lonely remnant of time. Beyond the veil of all their lies. You said the devil never dies. Incorporated his dark mind. Instigating all my light. So now I'll grant you my insight.